Good morning and welcome to the Terry Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Caroline Roddy and I'm a Senior Leonard Leadership Scholar studying accounting. The Institute for Leadership Advancement in the Terry College of Business develops values-based, impact-driven leaders who serve their communities and organizations. ILA instills leadership capabilities layered on top of the student's academic major. It promotes self-development, effective communication, teamwork, innovation, and adaptability in a changing global environment. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Dan Cathy, a servant-hearted leader, voracious learner, husband, father, and little-known musician. Dan is the chairman and chief executive officer of one of the nation's largest family-owned businesses, Chick-fil-A. He represents the next generation of leadership for the Atlanta-based fast food chicken restaurant chain, founded by his father, Truett Cathy. After earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Georgia Southern University, Dan Cathy was eager to incorporate his own skills and talents into the business, and he has taken an unconventional approach to Chick-fil-A leadership. I had the pleasure of interning at the Chick-fil-A Support Center this past summer, and I'm so thankful for how much Dan has invested in my personal growth and the culture he has upheld as head of the family business. I also had the enjoyment of riding shotgun in an ATV with today's honored guest as he sped in turns around his property during our first week. Valuing family, he and his wife Rhonda are loving parents to Andrew and Ross and grandparents to 3. Finally, Dan values servant leadership. He has a pioneering vision to care for people through missions like the City of Refuge and the Atlanta Committee for Progress. We are thrilled to get the opportunity to hear from this values-based leader. Also joining us today is Mark Rockett, Terry College of Business alum and Leonard Leadership Scholar, class of 2010. He currently serves as a business consultant in field operations at Chick-fil-A, where he provides individual and market-level support and coaching for owner-operators in Metro Atlanta. He completed his master's in management, strategy, and leadership from Michigan State University, and he currently resides in Peachtree Corners with his wife, Jenny, and 2 children. Please join me in welcoming Dan Cathy and Mark Rockett.
Thanks so much, Caroline. We are honored to be here. My name's Mark, as Caroline mentioned, and today's personal for me. I was a graduate, like she mentioned, of Terry College of Business and ILA in 2010, and so it's just neat that we can come back and be in this awesome building on this beautiful campus and spend some time here with you all, 400 of our now closest friends today. So Dan, thanks for being here.
Thank you, my honor. And Woody Fault was reminding me some 5 years ago that I was here on another event that always makes you feel good. We're growing a business and we're looking for great talent. So I hope our HR people have plenty of employment applications.
I'm sure they do. Well, before we get started, so it's always bad to go off script with the first question, but I noticed your socks backstage. Dan, so you got to tell us about these socks.
Yeah, well, these cows get all excited. Even anytime we're talking about eat more chicken, they get excited. And so these are the closest socks I had to the color red in my sock drawer very early this morning. But they happen to be some socks that got some cows on them. But it's a little bit of a little edgy campaign for me. It's a breakout. I started getting people sending me all these crazy socks, and got to the point that I couldn't close my sock drawer, so I had a big decision to make. So I went to the kitchen, I got me an old Publix shopping bag, and I went back, and all my gray, brown, solid colored black socks, I put them all in a Publix bag, and they're sitting on the shelf, and now my sock drawer it looks like a big, huge rainbow of colors and so forth. So it takes me twice as long to get dressed because I got to pick out what color socks I'm going to wear. But it's fun to try to be cool. Even if you're not cool, you can at least try to be cool.
So I've got to make a confession. So I had some crazy socks picked out for today.
Yeah, you should
as
have
well.
Worn them, man.
But I was like, I'm interviewing the CEO of my company. I cannot get up on stage, and so I wussed out. I wussed out. So life lesson to all you students out there: be bold. Wear crazy socks.
That's right.
Thank you very much. It's been our pleasure being here. No, all right. They're not here to learn about socks today, Dan.
Well, but it's an important metaphor, in all seriousness. I'll tell you, since you're off script, so am I. Perfect. But I had a conversation with Bernie Marcus. Bernie Marcus, co-founder of Home Depot. This is about 6 years ago. We were courting the College Football Hall of Fame to be moved from South Bend, Indiana, to bring it to Atlanta, and it's now adjoining the Georgia Aquarium, the Coca-Cola, World of Coca-Cola and so forth. It's there today. It's a 90,000 square foot facility, $75 million. It was a big deal, and we were asking him to help us fund the movement of it. And so Gary Stoken and myself were sitting in Bernie's office, and we had this beautiful brochure that had been presented with visuals and the artist drawings of what this College Football Hall of Fame would look like. And he flipped it real quickly, and we were heartbroken. He kind of closed it up and says, you know, what you guys obviously are missing an important ingredient in this deal. I said, what's that? He says, you need to have a wacko working on this project. I said, a wacko? He said, yeah. He says, you got a bunch of the stiff guys in here, the suits working on this stuff. You're going to have to go find some wackos to work on your project. He said, let me tell you, when we were doing the Georgia Aquarium, you know, we didn't have the wacko factor, and we realized that in order to have an aquarium that's going to be filled with people and the level of creativity that was needed to attract people is visually exercised and the high bar that people have today, you're going to have some really out-of-the-box thinking. And so we had to go find a wacko to work on the Georgia Aquarium, and we found one. I said, where do you find them? He said, California. You got a state full of them out there. You know, and he said they got ponytails and earrings, and they don't wear deodorant. But if you can put up with them, they're great to have around the table. So that was a very pivotal conversation for me to realize that business today and great design, not just of buildings, but systems and processes, are led by wackos. You know, the world doesn't need 400 wackos here necessarily, but you know, there's a little bit of a wacko factor we all need to be having in terms of especially unconventional thinking, because conventional thinking is not going to get you anywhere. We don't need to be paving any more cow paths. We've got enough cow paths that are out there that have been paved over and over and over again. And the world and how you're going to create value for this world that we're headed to is when you celebrate the wacko, the offbeat ideas, and whatever you have to do to stay wacko, hanging out with wackos. Again, even if you don't look like one, you can try to think like one anyway. And if it starts with wearing some wacko socks, then Mark, you need to get with the program.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Duly noted. Duly noted. So today we're here to talk about your dad, Truett, and the values-based leadership with which he ran his business and lived his life. Obviously, values-based leadership is extremely important for the University of Georgia, Terry College of Business, and specifically ILA as well. So can you talk a little bit about what were some of your dad's values that he lived by that you feel like has informed your leadership today?
Yeah. Well, let me give you a little bit of his family background, because oftentimes for all of us, the family experience that we have growing up as children is often when the values begin to get deep into our heart and mind. And it was certainly true in his case, as it is for each one of us here. We can have a tremendous sense of gratitude, even at the not so good things that happen in our family lives. We live in a day in which there's a lot of dysfunctional family, but my dad and my mom both grew up in a very dysfunctional family. My dad says that as he was growing up in the Great Depression, he was born in 1921 in Eatonton, Georgia, and we had this boll weevil and some other things that happened. We had the Great Depression back in the late 1920s, 28, 29, 30. And his father, who was the breadwinner of the family, was very discouraged. He was in real estate. He sold insurance. Nobody was buying policies. Land was not selling. And so he goes home, you know, to a wife and 4 daughters, 3 sons, and wasn't able to provide for the family. And it was very demeaning for him. I mean, the male role in the household at the time was that the males were the breadwinner of the family. And my dad, growing up in that ad city, just as how discouraging his father was. He could remember being beat on the rear end with a razor strap and other, almost verbally abusive, if not physically abusive. I mean, right on the edge. However, it reminds us that we don't have to be a victim of our circumstances, that even through the not so good things that happen in our life, the background, are forged, some values and truths. My dad said he could never remember his father ever saying he loved him. Now that's almost unimaginable today for me, because my dad was so affirming in my life. One of my favorite little sticky notes that I've got in my office at home was just a little 3M sticky note. It just said, "I love you," and has Dad underneath it. And, what a treasure that is for me. That affirmation that we get is part of building that character and value set in our life. It's a huge reminder to all of us who aspire to be parents, how important those values are and how they begin to affect the lens through which we see the world and how we process and make choices and decisions. My mother, she came also from a dysfunctional family. Her father abandoned her when she was less than 6 months old, and she was raised by a single breadwinner mother who was a seamstress and did a lot of sewing. So, the values that Dad lived out were forged out of some not so good things that happened in his life. He had determination. He realized if he was going to have anything, he was going to have to go for it himself. It was not going to be an allowance or a stipend or anything else. He was going to have to go out there and earn it. So he started selling Coca-Colas door to door. He discovered Earl Leonard. I don't know if he's here, but the ghost of Earl Leonard's here. If he's not here, but he's with Coca-Cola, of course. But Dad learned how to make a profit. He could buy a Coke for 4 cents. He could peddle it up down the street for 5 cents. If he added some ice to it and add a little value add element to the raw cost of goods sold, he could make a profit. And once he tasted making a profit, he never wanted to go to earn a paycheck. I don't guess he was ever on anybody's payroll because he was always working for himself. But I think those early childhood experiences where it forges not only our way we make decisions, but also forges how we view life and how we view the world in which we live.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned some of the adversity that he faced growing up, but it didn't just stop there, right? I mean, talk a little bit about the experience that he had with his brother as he was opening his first restaurant.
Yeah, on the original business license and on Dad's business card, it was the Dwarf Grill, owned by Ben and Truett Cathy. And Ben was his brother. That brother and another brother loved aviation back in the days where aviation maybe is not quite as safe as it is today. But that brother and another brother were killed along with 2 other pilots up in Dalton, Georgia, on the way to Chattanooga, only 2 years after he opened its original business in 1946. And Dad shares the story of what it was like to go to the morgue in Dalton and to try to identify which brother was whom after being through a fiery airplane crash. And his eyes well up with tears as he described what it was like that following Monday to come in and open up the daily cash book that was all handwritten notes. And there was his brother's signature of where he had closed out the day on the Friday or Saturday before the weekend, and realizing his brother was never going to be with him again. So, we all have tragedy that happens in our life, unexpected things that, regardless of our business plans and our personal plans and so forth, we've got to be ready, for the unexpected adventures that happen in our life. But, again, I think it's just God's process of hammering in, character and how we're going to deal with difficult circumstances. We're in the midst of a deal with FEMA right now to pack up over 2 million meals down in Orlando for people who are devastated by the events in Puerto Rico. And as I see the news reports of the tragedies that are there, I think about how lives will be changed, maybe in some good ways, down in Puerto Rico and South Florida and Houston. I think it's wonderful how our nation, came together in a time of crisis, and we set aside politics and national issues just to be, let's just be citizens here and let's help out one another. It's a wonderful thing that happens, and I hope that even out of tragedy, that positive things can be forged.
Absolutely, absolutely. And he did that. As you think about how he grew the Dwarf Grill and then opened multiple locations and then finally Chick-fil-A as we know it today, and growing from the first mall. Now we have over 2,200 restaurants throughout the country, which is pretty awesome. So I want to read something that you wrote recently about your dad, and then I want to ask you a quick question. You write, "When I think of my dad as a leader, I'm reminded of how well he stayed the course. Some leaders struggle to keep their eye on the prize, but I think that might be because the prize shifts, or maybe because they're eyeing the wrong thing. Dad knew who he was, and that knowledge helped him stay true to what made him who he was." I think that's really powerful. So when you think about your dad and the impact that he had on you, can you describe that a little bit more?
Probably the most succinct thing that I could say, and I said this years before he passed away, was a sense of gratitude for living a life of integrity. Integrity is when you're the same person at work as you are at home. And you're the same person at home as you are when you teach a Sunday school lesson. And having been able to see, him in the whole range of life as time passed, the struggles of the early days of the Dwarf House and the first mall locations to the exciting things that have happened in our business in the last 10 or 15, 20 years, and to see as the business prospered, his generosity to share that with other things. He was able to start a Windshape program with camps and foster homes and a retreat center and team leadership building venture that we have going on, and the impact that we had in marriages. To see that, as we succeed, there's this, in success hopefully, in business, that there's also this stewardship opportunity that emerges where you can reinvest back into the lives of people. And to see how consistent. He often told, even at the Dwarf House, of Eddie White, who was had trouble getting enrolled in college, and to help him, to get the tuition that he needed. Not only just the tuition, but send him downtown to one of the men's clothing stores and help him, pick out a shirt, a pair of pants, and some jacket to wear. And the salesman said, "Well, you got any underwear?" He said, "Underwear?" He said, "Yeah, let me show you some of this fancy underwear." He said, "Well, you're not going to charge that to Truett Cathy, are you?" He said, "No, he wants you to look good from stem to stern. We want you to even have the underwear that you need, So, but that element of, that's a story that goes back 60, 70 years, that he was generous. So, if you think you want to be generous when you're successful, then start today. Even as modest as your means might be right now, this spirit of generosity, the spirit of humility, the spirit of compassion, those are very, very important virtues to curate within your own heart life and to practice them consistently over time. They may scale, it may get different, but the root of it starts where we are.
Starts today. That's a great reminder. So you also described your dad recently. You wrote that he was a party kind of guy, which for most...
there's a wide range of party.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, I don't know if most people describing their father that way, I don't know if that would be seen as a good thing. But in your case, it was. It's meant as a compliment. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that side, the side that maybe we wouldn't have ever seen.
Well, David Sayers, I was walking through the marketing department, and as I was walking through, Michael Aegis over here, he had discreetly had his headphones on, indicating he did not want to be disturbed. But on the wall of the marketing department is this wonderful expression near the foosball table that says, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And so he realized that this idea of creativity and inspiration and so forth was really wrapped around, learning how to take fun seriously. That sounds like an oxymoron, but you have to practice that and kind of do some wacko things, as I mentioned earlier. And so he loved to have a good time, and we have pictures of him at the Dwarf House in Noonan down there with a hula hoop around his waist. We've got pictures with him, running down the aisle with an Olympic torch. And we've got pictures of him in a boxing outfit with a big black eye that's there. We've got all these things, self-effacing humor, where he loved to have fun. He knew people loved laughing at him, doing crazy things, even when he couldn't pronounce names. I was doing a video yesterday where I was messing up big time on some names of some people I was interviewing. It was very embarrassing. But I realized the thought came about it's part of my DNA because my dad didn't pronounce people's names very easily. We have a Chick-fil-A operator in Birmingham, Greek name. His name is Konstantin Zabukas. And when we're having fun with my dad, we'll say, Dad, what's that guy's name in Birmingham? It's such a really great operator. He's got a great name. What was that name again? So those are the kind of fun and games we have with our dad. But even Las Vegas, he had a great time in Las Vegas. Now, he wasn't at the crap table, but the International Council of Shopping Centers, ICSC, where all the deals were made for shopping mall developers, was in Vegas. And he enjoyed running around. He loved going bowling and doing other kinds of things like that. So he enjoyed having fun all along the way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's if you come to our office, you'll see there's a Batmobile in the lobby, which I think it just epitomizes the fun. Apparently, when he got the Batmobile, and you could probably tell the story better than me, but he drove it around the parking lot in a Batman outfit.
Yeah, I wasn't there that day. I saw pictures of
it.
But, yeah.
Okay.
But he enjoyed that because of several reasons, but one of which he loved to negotiate. Now, if you like to negotiate, the world's going to be at your doorstep because every business venture depends on a transaction, and someone's going to have to negotiate that transaction. I was talking to one of our ladies over here that's going to pursue sports marketing, and I think I asked her if she liked to negotiate. I don't know if y'all offer negotiating 101, but that's a great skill to have. But he loved the art of the deal. Reminds me of somebody else that we know that loves the art of the deal. But it is a great skill to have, and he used it all the way through his life. And that's really the backstory behind the Batmobile.
That's awesome. That's fun. So when you think about legacy and you think about your dad's legacy, I'm just curious, as you spent time with him over the years, how did he talk about building a legacy, or did he ever talk about what his own legacy would be?
Well, I think his legacy is represented in this room. I see people like David Sayers over here, and Michael Age, Doug Barnett that was in the Sunday school class, Woody Falk that's right here, who grew up with my dad and became a son to my dad, and others in this room. It's the lives of the people that are here. Suzanne Chambers that's here, and her husband Paul, and their son who's here at the Terry School. We are all his Seamus down here, and Kevin and Brad and other operators that are here. We're all his legacy, if you will. Someone described children as messengers we send to a time we will not see. All these people that I've just mentioned all have incredible stories about interactions that they had with my dad. I've got a picture I found this weekend that I'd never seen before, but it was my dad socked out on a sofa on Sunday afternoon, which was his favorite position after a good meal in church on Sunday and having lunch. He would lay on the sofa, and I'm laying on top of him with a pillow. I was 14, 15 years old. I still had hair on my head. I saw that picture and I said, man, I'm glad my mother wasn't serving baked beans, by the way I was kind of positioned.
I'm glad too.
But that legacy is all about memories that you have, people that influenced your life, and what a responsibility it is for us to take those memories and the way it affected our life, to share the stories of our life with other people that perhaps they might be inspired, and to realize that God is all around every one of us, wanting to inspire our life, to be bold and courageous and take on, big, hairy, audacious goals. I know when y'all talk about big hair, y'all use that in another way, but I think of it as goals that God wants to set, help us to set for our life, that are far beyond our resources, far beyond anything that we can see around us, but is a tremendous need that exists out there, and we need to go for it. One of the things I think about transformation and how he changed, evolved over the years. He's the only one in our industry that I know of that started out flipping hamburgers and scrambling eggs behind the counter at 25. And, you know, when he passed away, he was CEO of a $5-6 billion business. And we still had the wheels on the wagon. It wasn't falling apart, but it still had a head of steam, and it was still moving forward. You know, and he was in his 90s, still going at it. That entrepreneurial hormone that he had, you know, was still alive and well in him. So we're the legacy of that, not only of the Truett Cathys, but the Earl Leonards and the Coach Vince Dooleys and all the other incredible people that have been here who we are their legacy. We are the epitome of their legacy, bald head and all. We're the epitome of their lesson and their lives, and we get to carry these lessons, you know, forward into the next generation.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned his entrepreneurial spirit, and if you knew Truett or even know of Truett, clearly he built Chick-fil-A into what it is. But he had visions for all sorts of different things, and some wacko ideas and some not so wacko ideas. Can you take us all the way back to the story of how he came across the chicken sandwich? And then can you fast forward and talk about 40 years later, even when he was approaching the end of his life, how those wheels were still turning?
Well, we were at the little Dwarf Grill, later renamed Dwarf House, was just a diner operation. We had hamburgers on our menu, still do today at that location, a little ribeye steak, breakfast with scrambled eggs and grits and all the things you can imagine seeing at a Waffle House. That was been on our menu since 1946. And never had chicken on the menu. Chicken was oftentimes the only way we knew of chicken predominantly was chicken on the bone, whether it be a leg or thigh or breast meat, but it all had bones that are in it. And when you cook chicken, they have bones. It's quite a long time that it takes to cook it if you're going to fry it up. And then it's got to sit for a while. So it didn't really work in a fast food diner type operation. Fast food it's a whole lot faster now than it was back 40 years ago with all the new cooking systems and so forth that we had. So a couple of friends of his in College Park, Jim and Hall Good, brought over a little plastic bag of deboned chicken breast that they had gotten into processing chicken for the airline catering business and had some breast meat that was bigger than what could fit on these little compartmental trays. By the way, there was a time in which they actually served food on airlines. Even from Atlanta to Birmingham, you get a hot meal almost. But so he remembered how his mom used to season chicken in the boarding house that he grew up in on Saturday night, and began to pull seasonings down off the shelf and season this deboned chicken breast, and it would marinate into the muscle tissue of itself. And then after letting it marinate, he overnight, he put it in a flour-based, what we call seasoned coater. So it's flour and salt, pepper, a lot of other stuff that he mixed in there with it. And freshly breaded it, and then we cooked it. And we didn't have a henny penny at the time. We had open fryer that we're using for French fries. And so we cooked it. We had some hamburger buns that were there, obviously because we're in the hamburger business. Had some pickles that were there. So he said, let's just butter the bun. We'll take this, piece of chicken, and we'll put some pickles on there, and voila. And he originally called it a chicken steak sandwich. Some customers said it got too much salt on it, got too much pepper on it. So it kind of went through a few weeks of variation on the seasonings and so forth. But finally they said, you got it right, don't change it. Add it to the menu. People raved about it. Began to think other people might like to serve this product as well, thinking like Coca-Cola was a branded product on different menus, and was going to follow that line of thinking. Only to discover you could not register the name chicken steak sandwich, and came up with the idea of chick, and then filet, as in filet mignon, deboned chicken breast, and the A was set aside as in grade A, U.S. grade A, and then we paid an artist $75 to design that logo. Best marketing dollars we've ever spent. And you may be interested to know, some of you may be interested to know that the artist that designed the Chick-fil-A logo is the father of a guy named Louis Giglio, who pastors a small little country church in Atlanta. But interesting story. So got into the mall business, opening up freestanding restaurants. he kept on this idea of entrepreneurship. He opened up a Truett's Pizza that we have in Fayetteville. And then his last great entrepreneurial venture and creative exercise was developing a Hawaiian chicken restaurant called Truett's Luau. He said, we'll have a corner of the market. There's no other Hawaiian chicken restaurant in all of Fayetteville. And, so there we are. So you'll have to check that out if you're in South Atlanta.
That's right. And he did that at 90 years old,
He
right?
was 90 years old. Thank goodness he got to see all the dancing girls and grass skirts and music that we had. Big fanfare for grand opening. It was very, very exciting. Let me, by the way, just encourage you to please eat more chicken, because it costs us the cash flow revenue of 3 Chick-fil-A restaurants to keep this Hawaiian luau restaurant up and running.
All right, take
But
notes,
we're going to
take
get there.
notes,
We're
take
going to
notes.
get
We will. We will. Thinking long term. Thinking long term. So talk a little bit. So we've got Truett the entrepreneur. I'd love to hear a little bit about how that influenced you and your thinking as now you're leading this business. I think for those that know you well, you've got this big entrepreneurial bent. You're always thinking. You challenge us as staff to think forward, think different, think cool.
Yes.
Can you share some of the things that you're thinking about right now?
Well, my career with Chick-fil-A has been very heads down, very focused on our core business. Different roles that I've had with the business and growing the what we call our support center to support all these restaurants. It's been very focused on things that we can do to improve our business systems and processes to make the current business model better and better and better. But particularly since my dad's passing, I've become much more conscious, aware of that if I don't get entrepreneurial, which I've never been really up until this point. I've been very intrapreneur in terms of new improvements in our core business. That when a business loses its entrepreneurship, it is only a matter of time. Now, it may be a matter of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but it's just a matter of time, because you lose your moxie. You lose the very thing that kept you relevant to the business, which is taking as vision and risk and finding sources of capital and on and on and on. And so, my career is changing. By the way, I got this little in training thing you may have noticed on my name tag that's here. I was at Truett's Chick-fil-A, a new concept that we've done down in Noonan, and I saw these employees walk around with this in training name tag. I'd never seen that before. We never had done that before, and they went out to a printer, got it printed up. I said, "What's this about?" I said, "Well, this is for all the people that are learning a lot, and if they make a mistake, then maybe the customers will be a little more patient with them." I said, "I'll take 5 of them." So I stuck them on my name tags, but if I could plot my learning curve right now, honestly, it is as steep now as it was when I was 25 and 30 years old, particularly on the entrepreneurship side. I've recently read a book called The 3-Box Solution. This would be a really good one for you business people to write down, to make a note of. The 3-Box Solution. You go to Amazon Prime, it'll get to your dorm or apartment before you get home from this little lecture here. But he says, he's an Indian professor at Dartmouth, but he talks about how myopic businesses become particularly successful businesses, and you stay so intoxicated with your own success that the blinders get bigger and bigger on the side, and you just get better and better and better at the one thing you know how to do. But in the meantime, the world around you is shifting. So he says box 1 is your current business. Plenty of improvement, at the drive-thru at Chick-fil-A to do a better job. So there's plenty of room for improvement in box 1. But box 2 is all the things you need to forget about box 1. That if becoming obsolete, you just don't know it yet. That there's people out in Silicon Valley, that are ringing our bell, and in Seattle, Washington, that are ringing our bell, and other places, that we better be back up and see the bigger picture. And box 2 is the things you need to forget about. Number 3, box 3, is really where you need to put a bunch of wackos, build a little budget firewall between them and the rest of the organization over here, and put them in a sandbox and let them have playtime and see what they can come up with. And so we actually have done that. We've formed a little group called Red Wagon Ventures. It's a very entrepreneurial group, and we're working on all kind of new thoughts about particularly experiential retail. That's a buzzword right now. Any retailer that's not building and bolting into their operation an experience component are going to be victimized by online ordering. But you can combat that by creating experiences that you could never have on an app. Real-time, hands-on, things you can smell, touch, see, and hear. And so early this week, I shook hands with the CEO of Mattel, the largest toy maker in the world. And we have a joint venture development agreement where we're developing a new next-generation family entertainment experience for young families with children between 3 and 10 years old, using all the properties, IP that's owned by Mattel. Ken, Barbie, Thomas the Train, American Girl, all these incredible products and brands that they have. They're the world's largest toy maker. Half their sales are in the U.S., half of it's international, about a $6 billion business. And they realize that the future for their brand is having these sensory experiences. And they know that Chick-fil-A is really good in the experience business. Our back-end systems on accounting, IT, real estate, operations, marketing, on and on, can have a new user interface, GUI, if you will, that may not be food, but it may be family entertainment. And so we may be able to stack alongside Chick-fil-A some other experience retail ventures that could potentially really resonate in the marketplace. So this is entrepreneurship. It's got risk written all over it. It's got potential failure written all over it, but it could have a lot of upside, and it could be the very thing that enables us to keep the business healthy going forward.
I love that, the willingness to take risk to stay relevant. That's huge. I think that's huge both as a business, but then also personally as leaders. And so for you students, as you're thinking about next stages of your life and starting careers, what risks can you take that will keep you relevant along the way? That's huge.
Yeah, and a little secret about that. In taking a risk, I would encourage you to keep your wild-haired ideas, keep them very private for a while until you can incubate them in your own heart and life. That if you expose this wacko idea to even your closest friends, and you tweet about it or you text about it, there's high likelihood somebody out there is going to think that's a very stupid idea, and they're going to rain on your parade. And you're very emotional, vulnerable when these new ideas are in their inception form. A lot of these ideas, I believe, are God-inspired ideas, and they're especially vulnerable to a lot of negative, stinking thinking by a lot of other people who themselves don't have the courage to be bold and courageous and go outside the box. So be careful. Let those things incubate inside your heart and life for a while. And at the right moment, at the right time, when you've mustered up that courage, there will come a point that you're going to have to share that idea. Because big, hairy, audacious goals, you never have your own resources to do it all. You're going to have to require other people's capital and other talent to be able to make it happen. If it's God-inspired goals, I guarantee you, it will not fit within your own box. It will always cause you to have to be very bold and share that with other people. I had this experience 4 years ago when we started Pinewood Studios in Atlanta. I could not talk about it to some of my family members. I could not talk about it at Chick-fil-A staff meetings. I wanted to, but I knew they were thinking, that's absolutely foolish. And when I did bring it out of the closet, that's exactly the response that I got. But by then, I was already committed. I was already head in on the deal, and now we have the largest soundstage operation in the nation outside of Warner Brothers, producing on our lot right now the largest film from Marvel ever produced, exceeding Star Wars and everything that's going on out there. So it's been off the charts successful, and it's been a lot of encouragement that if you feel these entrepreneurial hormones, then put some steroids on them and go after it.
I love that. So you talked about Pinewood, which is kind of this personal venture that you're on. but you also have some personal philanthropic passions. I know you're very involved in Westside Atlanta. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing there and what your heart is behind that work?
Yeah. Well, all of us in the private sector, are going to be honing up some incredible skills. The skills that it takes to compete with McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Panera Bread, Chipotle, the kind of skills that it takes to compete with those are also skills that can be used by other people for a lot of other civic good. I mean, the private sector is a lot of civic good inherently in helping people have a place of restoration when they come to eat in our restaurants. But it's skills that other organizations need to be able to move society and culture forward. In the west side of Atlanta, it is incredibly tragic that right across the street from a $1.5 billion football stadium, and of all names, Mercedes-Benz, that right across the street, not down the road, not in another community, across the street, Northside Drive, are people digging through a trash can trying to find lunch, while the limousines are pulling in the front door at Mercedes-Benz to get an elevator and have shrimp cocktail, while they watch a game in air conditioned, the setting. What's wrong with this picture? And if you don't see the picture, it doesn't bother you. But when I started seeing the picture of what was going on the west side of Atlanta, 30314 zip code is the most notorious zip code in the state of Georgia for homicides, HIV/AIDS, homelessness, high school dropouts. Less than 45% of the students graduate from high school in the 30314 zip code. A tragic condition. And so I've been partnering with Arthur Blank to kind of ring the bell that, what can we be proud of in Atlanta? With the Beltline, Ponce Market, the new stadiums, the SunTrust Park, Mercedes-Benz. If across the street we've got people that are 40% depopulation in that community in the last 30 years. 40% depopulation. And so it's going to take a lot of inputs to kind of crank up this community. But it can be, and we're seeing a lot of exciting things that are going on already. And this community can get back on its feet again. There's so much wind at our back to make this happen with urbanism and other trends that are going on. And again, Atlanta community is rallying. The Delta Airlines, the UPSs, the Arthur Blank Foundation, Coca-Cola, you just go down the list, are all rallying to help resurrect this community. It's the same communal spirit that we had to bring the Olympics to Atlanta that helped us move through the transition of the civil rights movement of the 60s, where we did not have the burning of Atlanta that we saw in other major cities, because Robert Woodruff and the others said, hey, we're not going to have that happen in our backyard. Let's set aside our egos and set aside our logos. Let's do something important for Atlanta. And we see that same spirit taking place today in the West Side.
That's awesome. So I think the lesson there is grow where you're planted and don't wait for somebody else to do something.
Go after it.
I love that. Okay, so 30 seconds. What's one message that you would like, if you only have one thing to tell these students, one last thing?
Goodness.
30 seconds or less. And then we've got one fun thing that we want to do before we end.
All right, 30 seconds. That was 5 seconds of it right there.
That was. All right, 25 seconds. We're timing you.
All right, if my dad was sitting here, it said 3 most important decisions in life start with the letter M. And there's a dozen people sitting right here who could tell you what those 3 M's are. Who your master in life is going to be, who your mate in life is going to be, and what your mission in life is going to be. If you put self on the throne of your life, you're going to be a life of self-centeredness and selfishness. And it's not going to be a very fun life to live. Ask the Lord to inspire you with a vision, purpose, and meaning for your life. Number 2, find the right mate for your life. That is critically important, to find the right mate. This is a tremendous place to find the right mate in life. And number 3, ask God for a compelling mission that so inspires you that it goes viral. It easily becomes an epidemic to our doctor friend here. So master, mate, mission.
Awesome.
How was that, 30 seconds?
It was a little longer, but we'll give you some grace.
On behalf of the Institute for Leadership Advancement and the Terry Leadership Speaker Series, we would like to thank Dan and Mark for being with us today. In ILA, we practice values-based leadership, and we know the Cathy family values giving back. As a thank you for coming today, the ILA students are preparing 15,000 meals through the Feeding Children Everywhere organization in your honor to be distributed in the Athens area. And for students... And for students, we want to thank all of you for attending today. And as you leave, please let us know who you are by filling out your who you are. And join us at our next Terry Leadership Speaker Series featuring Howard Young on January 19th.